All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. Let's talk about some more boxing. This time, let's talk about Jermall Charlo, the 160-pound champion, saying or pushing for a fight, calling out Gennady Golovkin, another 160-pound champion, but not saying anything about a certain Demetrius Andrade. You know, the drama continues to roll. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. The 160-pound division, a division that doesn't have a lot of answers as far as who the best fighter is. Some people think it's Jermall Charlo. Other people think that it's Gennady Golovkin. Well, people used to think it was Gennady Golovkin. And but now Jermall Charlo is pushing for a fight with Gennady Golovkin and saying, you know, that he wants to fight him. He actually, man, it's pretty interesting because he sounds like he's calling out Gennady Golovkin at the same time as him not wanting to pick on Gennady Golovkin. So he's like, you know, it doesn't want to seem like I'm calling out an old man. It doesn't really seem like, you know, Gennady Golovkin has looked that good in his last couple fights. He fought Sergey Derevyanchenko. A lot of people think that he lost to Sergey Derevyanchenko. So Jermall Charlo is at the same time that he's calling him out, he's also acknowledging that Gennady Golovkin may not be what Gennady Golovkin was several years ago. Personally, I don't think Gennady Golovkin is, Gennady Golovkin probably has faded because he's up, I think he may be 36, 37 years old. Somebody can check BoxRec, check his birthday on that. But he's definitely significantly older than Jermall Charlo, significantly older than Canelo Alvarez and Demetrius Andrade. So there is a chance that, that he has been falling off a little bit. But really, I just think that, Gennady Golovkin is an example of somebody that was a very solid fighter, that was very, very overhyped. And I don't really think he's fallen off that much. I just think that he's just, in a situation where people have kind of figured out how he fights. And, maybe he wasn't up for those fights like he may have been with the Canelo Alvarez fight, or he may be with Jermall Charlo fight. So I like looking at Gennady Golovkin. I can't say that I've seen him slow down or look slower or anything like that. I was just always of the mindset that Gennady was kind of a, is kind of I wouldn't say a one-dimensional fighter, but he's somebody that can be hit. And that if he gets in there with somebody that, that can box and outbox him, they got a chance to look good against Gennady Golovkin. That was the case with Danny Jacobs before Gennady Golovkin lost to Canelo Alvarez, and I think that really kind of maintains, is kind of the same situation. So, I agree with Jermall Charlo, though, when Jermall Charlo says, look, man, the guy's got a belt. It's a good unification fight, so let's make the unification fight. And, so that to me really says, that Jermall Charlo's doing what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to look for a unification fight with the other champions at 160 pounds. I think that is what, is going to get him closer to his ultimate goal of a fight with, ultimately with a fight with Canelo Alvarez. Now, in the same interview, Jermall Charlo said that he also would be willing to move up to 168 pounds. And he more than likely, I've heard, I didn't hear this out of his mouth, but I've heard it from other people, that he mentioned that he would also be, if he moved up to 168, would be willing to fight David Benavidez and get himself in a position where he could be the mandatory to fight for the belts that Canelo Alvarez has. Charlo has always been, and definitely even in this interview that I saw, was being very, very careful about what he said, what he had to say about Canelo Alvarez, being very, upfront about the fact that he's going to give Canelo Alvarez all the credit in the world. He's not going to diminish Canelo Alvarez, his accomplishments, but that he feels like he's a solid fighter and that, can stand his ground with anybody in there. So, he's looking for the Canelo Alvarez fight, but until he can get that, he's got to get other fights that are going to feed his family. Gennady Golovkin obviously is one of those things that, one of those fights that can do that. Personally, I would like to see him, though, fight Demetrius Andrade. And I think that the reason that I would like to see him fight Demetrius Andrade is that I think it goes further for Jermall Charlo as far as demonstrating how level and how the level of fighter that he is. At this stage in Gennady Golovkin's career, I think Jermall Charlo is going to beat him, and I think Jermall Charlo can beat Gennady Golovkin, pretty much going away, because Gennady, he has what he needs to keep Gennady Golovkin's respect, because Jermall Charlo, say what you want to say about Jermall Charlo's got a very, very solid jab, and he's got a very, very good straight right, and he also moves well in the ring. He likes to keep it in distance. He's not a guy that's going to run all around the ring. He's somebody that is going to definitely try to impose his will on you, but he does it, in a fashion where he stays responsible. And I think that where he's not going to take a lot of chances against Gennady Golovkin. And what I see is that fight being pretty much the difference between Gennady Golovkin and Charlo is that Charlo is the younger, fresher fighter, and I think he's going to really bust up Gennady Golovkin with his jab and a straight right and get himself, and take that route to a victory over Gennady Golovkin. Where if he fought Demetrius Andrade, I think that it's more involved. He's going to have a harder puzzle to solve with Demetrius Andrade. And the fact that Demetrius Andrade is a southpaw, the fact that he moves very well, he's not a predictable fighter. He doesn't have a lot of, preconceived patterns and things like that. So, I think obviously the bigger fight in name for Jermall Charlo is Gennady Golovkin, but I think the better fight for like the skill of it and to prove that he's a better fight is Demetrius Andrade. However, I will readily admit that I am more than likely in the minority in that. There's a lot of people that don't have a lot of respect for Demetrius Andrade as a fighter and constantly push, the same old conversation. Who do you fight? Who did he fight? Who did he fight? But, for me, they say the same thing about Jermall Charlo. Like, who did he fight? Who did he fight? Who did he fight? Look, man, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know what I mean? Is a guy is a good fighter because he fights? But if nobody fights him, how's he ever going to be a great fighter, right? If people continue to avoid Jermall Charlo, how can Jermall Charlo ever prove what kind of fighter he is? Same thing goes with Demetrius Andrade. How is he going to be? How can he ever prove it if you don't actually fight him? But I understand what's going to go on with Jermall Charlo and Demetrius Andrade. Jermall Charlo is still holding on to a beef that Jermall Charlo had with Demetrius Andrade back down at 154 pounds when Demetrius Andrade pulled out of that fight. So, while I wish he wouldn't hold that grudge, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I don't understand why he would hold that grudge and why that might eventually postpone or just completely prevent a fight happening with Demetrius Andrade. There also is the little bit, a chance, not a little bit of a chance, a significant chance that Demetrius Andrade might beat Jermall Charlo and prevent Jermall Charlo from getting that Canelo Alvarez fight. I certainly hope, though, that Gennady Golovkin takes the bait and fights Demetrius Andrade. Right now, it seems like he's in this kind of like we keep hearing about him fighting Murata, who's the WBA champion. But I don't know if that fight's been set or not. He's over there on DAZN, and DAZN has been real iffy about putting fights out this year, as it looks like they move towards getting out of American boxing all around. Unless, of course, Gennady Golovkin is going to go fight in the UK, Murata in the UK, which is, could possibly happen. But anyway, I'm looking forward to what's going to go on with this 160 pound. It's really the pound division is really stagnant right now. And, all these guys are sitting there with these belts, and at least Jermall Charlo is talking about unifying with at least one of them. I know Demetrius Andrade's been trying to fight everybody, but, Demetrius Andrade looks like he's the odd man out. Anyway, that's my take on the situation. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.